United States geography is a story of land and people. A land filled with natural resources, from the Rocky Mountains to the Sonora Desert, the San Francisco Bay to the Mississippi, the Grand Canyon to Niagara Falls. Since 2000 BC, when the Native Americans settled on this continent, people from all over the world have made this land their home. With lush forests, sweeping prairies, coastal plains, and bustling cities, the land is as diverse as the people who live here. North to south, east to west, each region of the United States is a piece of living history, shaping the heart and soul of the nation from sea to shining sea.
The Midwest and Great Plains region is located in the north-central portion of the country. It's often referred to as the Heartland, not only for its central location, but also because of its great importance in feeding and supplying the needs of the nation. The land is generally flat, without mountains, and touches many bodies of water, including 4 of the Great Lakes and the 3 largest rivers in the country. Both agriculture and manufacturing are very important in the Midwest and Great Plains region. Much of the food that feeds the nation is grown or raised here. And many goods, from tools and appliances to automobiles and airplanes, are manufactured here. 12 states make up the Midwest and Great Plains region. The eastern part of the region is generally known as the Midwest and is made up of the states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Missouri. The western 5 states, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas, make up part of the Great Plains. One of the most important geographic features of the region is the Great Lakes. Lake Superior, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie lie along the northeastern boundary, while Lake Michigan lies completely within the region. The nation of Canada forms the region's boundary on the north. In the east, it's bounded by the states of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. On the south by Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and on the west by Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. Perhaps the most defining feature of the entire region is its relatively flat land, varying from low, rolling hills in some parts to vast areas of perfectly flat landscape, almost treeless, where you can see for miles. These flat, treeless areas are called plains. They receive less rainfall than the eastern part of the region, but enough to grow wheat and grasses. The rest of the region receives adequate rainfall to grow almost any crops. The combination of flat land, rich topsoil, adequate rainfall, and hot temperatures has made agriculture flourish throughout the region. Good transportation routes to the rest of the country meant the nation's heartland would also be the nation's breadbasket. The Midwest and Great Plains region produces most of the nation's corn, wheat, beef, and dairy products. Because of differences in rainfall and climate, each of these products is raised most abundantly in different sections of the region. The western part of the region gets just enough rainfall for growing wheat. The Great Plains states make up the richest wheat-producing area of our country, known as the Wheat Belt. The wetter states to the east, from western Ohio through Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa, form the Corn Belt, where most of the nation's corn is produced. The cooler climate and shorter growing season of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota means wheat and corn don't grow well. But pastures do, and dairy cows flourish here. The area is often called America's Dairyland because much of the nation's milk, butter, and cheese comes from this dairy belt. Beef cattle and soybeans are also raised in abundance. Almost all types of farm products, from fruits and vegetables to poultry and livestock, are produced within the region. Now, getting all this food to market was made easier by the region's central location within the country and by good transportation routes to foreign countries. The Great Lakes provide a shipping route via the St. Lawrence Seaway to the Atlantic Ocean. The Ohio and Missouri rivers run through the region and connect with the Mississippi River, which can carry barges of grains and other foods to the Gulf of Mexico. These are the three largest rivers in the country, and another of the region's outstanding geographic features. Railroads were easy to build across the region's flat land. Lakes, rivers, and railroads combined to form an excellent transportation network, along which many cities grew up. The largest city and unofficial capital of the region is Chicago. It's located at the southern end of Lake Michigan, where the river system meets the lake. It's the region's primary port for foods and manufactured goods being shipped overseas. Chicago is our nation's third largest city and home to the Sears Tower, the tallest building in the country. Wichita, Kansas, grew up in the last century as a shipping point for the beef cattle industry. Cattle were driven up the Chisholm Trail to Wichita, where they were shipped on to market on the newly built railroad. Corn and other grains from the region are regularly shipped to Milwaukee and St. Louis, where they're brewed into beer, bottled, and shipped worldwide. Many city dwellers make their living from processing and selling farm products. While many live on farms, nearly two-thirds of the region's people live in towns and cities. Some of the larger-sized cities include Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati in Ohio, Detroit and Lansing in Michigan, Indianapolis, Indiana, Chicago and Springfield, Illinois, Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, Omaha, Nebraska, Topeka and Wichita, Kansas, and Kansas City and St. Louis, Missouri. This great stainless steel arch stands on the bank of the Mississippi River in St. Louis as a monument to the early pioneers who settled the region.
Well, the arch was designed, built, and created to serve as a lasting memorial to Thomas Jefferson, to commemorate his purchase of the Louisiana Territory, and to commemorate St. Louis's role as the gateway city to the American West.
The region was first explored and claimed by the French. After the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the entire region became part of the United States, and many people traveled west to settle the land they thought would be empty wilderness. The most famous route west was the Santa Fe Trail, which started in western Missouri. It ran all the way to New Mexico, but many people stopped along the way to start a farm. The U.S. government gave them the land for free and called it homesteading.
As soon as this was opened up to homesteading, my grandfather homesteaded 120 acres here.
This is Fort Larned, built along the trail in Kansas.
as it was established in 1859 to protect the mail and the travelers along the Santa Fe Trail.
Now, the settlers needed protection because the land was anything but empty wilderness. It was home to many thousands of Native Americans who had lived across the entire region for hundreds of years. The United States government did not respect the rights of the Native Americans and took away their land to give to white settlers. Many of the Native Americans were killed and driven from their land. Now today, their descendants live throughout the region. Some have been absorbed into the melting pot of American culture, but many of them are working to preserve their unique heritage. This man belongs to the Winnebago tribe in Wisconsin.
But our tribe has been in this area for several hundreds of years, and the Wisconsin River, which lies just behind us over here, has played a great part in the history of our tribe, because the river here has been used just like the highways were used in the past. We used it for a source of transportation and commerce in the years past. We have many villages around this area. Historically, they're documented from an archaeological standpoint.
Native Americans are only one of many ethnic groups living in the Midwest and Great Plains region. Immigrants came here from all over the world. Many Scandinavian immigrants found the cool climate of Wisconsin and Minnesota to their liking. Cleveland, Ohio is a typical city of the region where one can find many different ethnic groups. It's easy to find German influence, and Italian. And how about Lithuanian? Lithuania is a very small country in Europe, but immigrants came to this region from just about everywhere. While the early settlers came here mostly to farm, the later immigrants came to this region for a different reason. They came to work in the many new manufacturing and mining industries. A large part of the nation's manufacturing base grew up in the Midwest and Great Plains region, for many of the same reasons that it became the nation's breadbasket. Good transportation routes to the rest of the country, as well as abroad, and plentiful natural resources. For instance, iron ore can be mined in Minnesota, where 75% of our country's iron supply comes from. It can be shipped across the Great Lakes to Gary, Indiana, where it's made into steel. Now, the steel goes by railroad to nearby Detroit, Michigan. There, it's made into automobiles, ready to ship anywhere in the country, or through the St. Lawrence Seaway to anywhere in the world. So the entire process, from mine to finished product, takes place within the Midwest and Great Plains region. Many different kinds of products are manufactured here, and many different raw materials are the product of mining throughout the region. In addition to iron, coal is an important product of mining. Zinc, copper, lead, uranium, petroleum, and natural gas are produced, along with many other natural resources. Even gold. South Dakota is the nation's second largest producer of gold. The Homestake mine is very old, and it's the richest gold mine in the United States.
I drove into Deadwood to an old hotel on Main. Told the clerk behind the counter.
The search for gold fueled much of the westward movement in the last century.
Get some shut-eye bills, said I'll see what I can do. A stranger's always.
Deadwood, South Dakota became famous for its gunfighters.
Seems I barely touched the pillow. years.
But most people of the Midwest and Great Plains region in the last century were engaged in commerce, agriculture, and manufacturing. Dearborn Village in Michigan preserves some of the past. The bicycle makers who worked in this shop would later go on to invent the airplane. Craftsmen working in the Amana colonies in Iowa began manufacturing high-quality furniture and appliances over a century ago. The region has produced more than its share of famous people. Abraham Lincoln lived in this house in Springfield, Illinois.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free.
Mark Twain lived in Hannibal, Missouri, where he wrote about Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher. Henry Ford not only built cars, he pioneered the modern production line method of manufacturing, which turned Detroit into the automobile capital of the world. Detroit is typical of the many industrial cities of the region, manufacturing centers located on waterways. The nearby University of Michigan is also typical of the high-quality universities of the Midwest and Great Plains region. Despite seemingly endless vistas of flat and rolling plains, the region has many areas of natural beauty and unique geographic formations. This area is known as the Wisconsin Dells. In southern Missouri, the Ozark Mountains are not tall, but provide a natural area of great beauty. And they seem to have inspired the local culture. Over 4,500 miles of shoreline along the Great Lakes provide great recreational opportunities for swimmers, boaters, fishermen, campers, and hikers. Even the sand dunes can be fun. The northern parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are covered with thousands of small lakes and streams. Canoeists and wilderness campers come from all over the country to enjoy the boundary waters. On the western edge of the region, the foothills of the Rockies begin to rise. The Black Hills of South Dakota have been the home of many Native American Indians. One sculptor and his family are attempting to honor Native Americans by carving a giant statue of Chief Crazy Horse out of this mountain. Another mountain nearby has already been carved into a monument. Mount Rushmore carries the faces of 4 presidents of the United States. Can you name them? The Midwest and Great Plains region is the nation's heartland, the nation's breadbasket, and the nation's industrial belt. It's been an important part of our country's economy for nearly 2 centuries. Its many modern cities have grown up on the shores of the Great Lakes and along the banks of the country's greatest rivers. Rich topsoil for farming, close proximity to the rest of the nation, and excellent transportation routes to foreign countries have helped trade and commerce to flourish here. Much of the nation's industrial might is centered in the Midwest and Great Plains region. The presidents who look down upon the country from Mount Rushmore are looking down upon a land that is in many ways the true heartland of our country.